We're going to examine some of the major challenges facing President Biden in this election year. And yes, that spending battle. Delaware Democratic Senator Chris Coons is national co-chair of the president's re-election campaign. And he's in the middle of all of the back and forth up on Capitol Hill. Senator, we heard from the Speaker of the House. He's hinting there that they may speed things up to try to avoid at least somewhat of a partial shutdown. What does it look like in the Senate if that happens?
So, folks, I've talked to here, both Democrats and Republicans in the Senate are cautiously optimistic that Speaker Johnson will take up this bill and pass it Friday morning, allowing his members, the House members in his caucus, some time to read the bill. It is a significant bill. It's about $1.19 trillion, or 70% of our total overall annual budget. And Bret, that's because the Department of Defense is one of the 6 bills that's up for us to pass. I think we have to avoid a government shutdown at all costs. It sends a terrible signal globally for us to shut down the federal government.
It doesn't seem like voters or American citizens have a real view about what happens behind closed doors when this stuff gets put together.
The American people want and deserve transparency in how we conduct this annual appropriations process. But you're right that it takes too long, and it's quite a mess.
Yeah. Senator, I want to talk about a couple of quick foreign policy issues that are bubbling up now. Obviously, the Israel-Hamas situation with Gaza and how the administration is dealing with that. But first, take a listen to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. This is about the Haiti rescue efforts of American citizens there.
It has been like pulling teeth to deal with some of these federal agencies. And the reality is you have an easier time getting into this country illegally than you do just to be rescued as a United States citizen. How the hell does that make any sense?
Look, I disagree with the governor that there has been no effort to rescue American citizens. Many American citizens have been rescued out of Haiti. We've been working for months and months to try and get a multilateral stability mission approved, funded, and deployed to Haiti, not using U.S. troops.
I'm going to point to the job performance numbers for President Biden here, and they're upside down as far as approval. Israel-Hamas at 31% to 65% disapprove. For critics who look at the administration from an Israeli point of view, have you heard of any other country that says this is how you have to conduct a war after they've been attacked? That's where the critics are coming from.
Well, look, we're in an unusual circumstance here because Israel is continuing to conduct combat operations against Hamas, as they should, to protect their citizens following the horrific October 7th attack, and to try and secure the release of the hostages that have been held by Hamas for 166 days. But they are operating in an environment where the neighbor to the south, Egypt, refuses to allow any of the Palestinians in Gaza to move out of the way of the military operations by Israel. What President Biden has conveyed to the Prime Minister, and what I've also said to Prime Minister Netanyahu, is before you go into Rafah at scale with a ground offensive to finish the job against Hamas, you must relocate innocent civilians. There's nearly 1 million of them. Because the civilian casualties in the operations in the rest of Gaza have been very high.
Yeah, there's a lot of concern about civilian casualties, no doubt about it. And but I guess the critics would say that some of the change, some of the shift for the administration is coming from a political point of view, and a concern about places like Michigan, and a concern about the Arab Americans and the progressives who have a real problem with this overall. And the thought about holding back possibly Israeli funds based on what they're facing, that's a real question mark.
I don't think this is something that's just become a concern because of a primary in Michigan. I think this has been a concern from the very beginning. This is a thread that runs through every single conflict, our conduct in operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. Our troops had to observe the rules of war and do their best to avoid civilian casualties in how they targeted and how they conducted their operations. That's part of how democracies that are based on the rule of law conduct themselves in wars.
Last thing, as the co-chair of the campaign, you look at those approval numbers I put up, upside down. You look at the swing state polls and where they are. And I've talked to you before how polls are a snapshot of time and don't mean that it defines the election. However, how do you characterize it quickly after the State of the Union address? Where do you think the campaign is at this moment?
I think President Biden gave a strong and a forceful and a clear State of the Union address where he laid out his objectives going forward. He made it clear he's optimistic, that he believes in the American people, that our economy continues to grow, that he's going to continue to fight to keep us safe and secure overseas. And he extended his hand to President Trump and said, let's work together to pass a bipartisan bill that would secure our southern border and allow us to continue to make progress on some of the challenging issues in front of us.
And you don't think that executive orders are coming down the pike on the immigration front?
I know they've been considered, but I continue to think that the best step for us to take is to take up and pass the bipartisan bill that was negotiated at great length here by Republican Senator Lankford and Democratic Senator Murphy with Senator Sinema. I also think the House should take up and pass the supplemental that will fund Ukraine, fund Israel, and fund humanitarian aid. My hope is that Speaker Johnson will put that on the floor just after we clear these annual appropriations bills today or tomorrow.
All right, well, we will watch all of that. Senator Coons, as always, thanks for coming on Special Report.
Thank you, Bret.